ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Asian Vision Dialogue. Well, as everyone may know that Cambodia is assuming the chairmanship of ASEAN for the third time within this year. And as the region and the world is full of issues and conflicts, ranging from the political crisis in Myanmar to the global health crisis to the war between Russia and Ukraine, we can see that Cambodia is indeed being tested for her capacity to lead ASEAN within this year. And with the hard work and commitment, we can see that Cambodia has done quite remarkable jobs so far, including the second visit of the Cambodia Special Envoy to the hosting of various ASEAN-related meetings. Ladies and gentlemen, currently Cambodia is preparing to host the 55th ASEAN Foreign Minister meetings, or we call AMM, and related meeting, which is taking place from 30th July to 6th August 2022. And once again, this meeting will be giving the great attention from the public and media. So in the expectation to reach a greater enrichment of understanding on the upcoming AMM, Asian Vision Dialogue has the privilege to invite Dr. Vannarith and Dr. SEUN to be our guest speaker in this episode. And we will be discussing the priorities and potential challenges for Cambodia to host the upcoming AMM. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take a moment to introduce our guest speaker. So, Dr. Vannarith, he is the president of the Asian Vision Institute, AVI, and Dr. SEUN, he is a policy analyst at the Royal Academy of Cambodia. So, without further ado, please join me in welcome our guest speaker to our program. Greeting, Dr. Vannarith and Dr. SEUN. Yeah, thank you so much for being with us today. I would like to start by dividing our discussion into three main sections because it's the first time for our program to be conducted in this Zoom meeting. So there will be three main sections for our dialogue today. The first part, we going to discuss a little bit on the key priorities of the agenda of the discussion during the AMM, and then we will go a little bit deeper into the scenario of the meeting through discussing like the key challenges, any diplomatic incidents during the meeting, and the last section we're gonna jointly make an assumption on the outcomes of the meeting. So now allow me to start our discussion. I would give the first question to Dr. Sam first. Well, from your expectation, Doctor, what would be the key agenda that will potentially be the priority of the discussion during the upcoming AMM?
Thank you so much, Sreynou, for your invitation. And also I would like to say hello to Dr. Vannarith, who are with us today. Sreynou, we have already know that right now in ASEAN, the most hottest issue is related to the crisis in Myanmar, as well as ASEAN is also working on how to. I'm not saying how to solve the crisis in between Russia and Ukraine, but I'm sure that the ASEAN, for the meeting of the foreign minister of ASEAN. They will focus mainly on the crisis in Myanmar, as well as they also will spend some time to talk on the evolution or something that is happening in Russia and Ukraine right now. And I think there is one more important issue. It is still related to Myanmar, but it is related to how the junta government executed the political activists that is become famous around the world right now. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Sam. So how about Dr. Vannarith? Do you have additional ideas regarding the agendas?
Yeah, I do agree that Myanmar crisis will be one of the key kind of topics for discussion and dialogue, also text negotiations, because I think there are still lingering kind of controversy and differences with regards to how to handle or approach the Myanmar issue. I think that another issue would be the war in Ukraine, because again, this is the very complex, sensitive political security agenda that may overshadow the ASEAN-related meetings, especially the East Asia Summit and ASEAN Regional Forum, because the gap and the differences are still huge between Russia and some of Russia friends and allies, and the US and its allies. So the two camps, the Russia camp and the US camp, will continue to polarize, and there's no sign of a compromise between these two camps. So it's very difficult for ASEAN, for Cambodia to build consensus between these two camps. Of course, we try to be neutral and accommodative, but learning from the previous experience at the G20 meeting in Indonesia and APEC meeting and in Thailand, the failure of issuing a joint statement is very high. I mean, the likelihood of the failure is very high. So we should prepare for that, because there's no consensus, so we cannot issue a joint statement. But we can have a chairman's statement or press statement to highlight what we discuss, what we agree, and what we agree to disagree. So agree to disagree, also agreement, right? It just we agree to disagree. So we need to accept that diversity of views and position and so on. And of course, the other issue that we need to focus on is the post-COVID-19 socio-economic recovery. What can you do? We can do together to recover together, and food security, energy security, supply chain resilience, climate crisis, and several other agendas will be on the table. But as I said, it seems that Ukraine war and Myanmar crisis are the two issues that will overshadow the meetings.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Vannarith. That's very informative. So I would like to give the floor to Dr. Vannarith once again. When it's come to ASEAN meeting, so now the most issue talk, yes, as you have already mentioned, is Myanmar and the war in Ukraine. But in terms of Myanmar, the public will want to know, like, will the representative from Myanmar attend the upcoming meeting? So what do you think? There will be any representative from Myanmar? And could you tell us, like, the impacts of the meeting with or without the representative from Myanmar? Yes.
Of course, without substantial progress in implementing the 5-point consensus, ASEAN cannot accept the political representation from Myanmar. And I don't think Myanmar will send a non-political representative to ASEAN meeting as well. So this similar to what happened in Brunei during Brunei chairmanship. So it's kind of a new normal for ASEAN to have Myanmar seat vacant at the Foreign Minister meeting and the summit. Of course, it affects the sense of unity within ASEAN 10, but it will not derail the progress of ASEAN in terms of regional dialogue and external relations. So the ASEAN 9 can vote, and the seat of Myanmar will be there, just a vacant seat, but the decision can be made by the ASEAN 9, the consensus of ASEAN 9. So that perhaps is the practice that will take place again at upcoming foreign minister meetings and related meetings. And this lack of Myanmar representation, political representation, will also can be a positive for ASEAN, because imagine if there's a presence of Myanmar at the meeting, and Myanmar try to block some of the decisions of ASEAN, then it can be a headache as well. So without the participation of Myanmar, it can help ASEAN to reach consensus more effectively.
Thank you, Dr. Vannarith. So, yeah, beside the issue of representative from Myanmar, there's another issue that also received a huge attention from the public. And yeah, there's recently there is information that Russian foreign minister will attend the AMM. So, Dr. Som, could you tell us what's your perspective on this participation, and will the meeting be affected by the intense issue of the war in Ukraine? And also, like, will this participation turn AMM into a political stake of the great powers?
Yes, from my own perspective, I believe that the AMM meeting will look very similar to what is happening in Indonesia during the G20 meeting, because but before we talk about the foreign minister of Russia who will join the ASEAN foreign minister meeting, we have to accept that ASEAN is divided right now, because so far when when the crisis between Russia and Ukraine first took place, we have some ASEAN countries that is voted to condemn Russia, and some they just boycotted their vote. I mean, they try not to involve in the conflicts. So there is a kind of divided action among ASEAN countries. So that I think some during for the upcoming meeting, there will have some countries that will express their feeling or their statement or their speech to condemn Russia on how they invade Ukraine or something like that. So I think in this kind of situation, Cambodia, especially Cambodia as a chair of ASEAN, and Cambodia is also one of the small countries. So we need to prepare for something that will happen for the upcoming meeting, because we cannot say that it will look different from what is happening in the G20 meeting. It must be very similar for the meeting. And one more important thing is that because we Cambodia as the chair of ASEAN, and we have some good friends, I mean, like Japan and South Korea, and probably, I mean, the United States also one of the good friends of Cambodia. And as what the Chairman just mentioned before this, Russia and United States, they still try to compete each other. They don't care where it is, in Indonesia or in Cambodia or in ASEAN countries, but as long as the United States is attending the meeting, and Russia also attend the meeting, and some ASEAN countries that dislike Russia and they do not want to see Russia in a meeting, so they will express something that make the meeting will not be comfortable. So in that kind of situation, Cambodia, we need to prepare something in case, like Dr. Vannarith mentioned, if we could not issue any agreement or any statement, or we should prepare ourselves to issue the statement of disagreement or the note of the speech or the note of any activities, because we cannot just leave the meeting without saying anything or without issuing any statement. But even a statement of disagreement, we also need to prepare in advance. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Som. That's really precious thought from you. So I would like to know from the viewpoint from Dr. Vannarith. So do you think that it's a good decision to have a Russian foreign minister to the meeting?
Well, as a host and as a chair, we have a duty to invite all the members to the meeting. So that is the kind of the norm of the host of the meeting or convener of the meeting. So it's nothing wrong with that invitation. But of course, the presence of Russia at the meeting, any meeting in the world, will be a controversial one. As Dr. Somsu mentioned earlier, I think it's very kind of deep-rooted geopolitical rivalries, confrontation between Russia and the United States and its allies, NATO and its allies in Asia Pacific. So it will be very kind of tense discussion, upcoming discussion, but we need to be prepared for it. It's a new normal now. I think this kind of confrontation, but as long as they still, how to say, come to the dialogue, even though they have a lot of disagreement, that's still, from a diplomatic point of view, it's still a positive sign. Even though they don't listen to each other, but being in the same platform can be a positive sign as well.
Thank you, Dr. Vannarith. So now we move on to the general pre-assumption of the outcomes of the meeting. So yeah, of course, there is uncertainty about the scenario that we are discussing right now, and the real situation during the meeting. But what is your prediction for the outcomes of the meeting? As Dr. Som mentioned earlier, do you think ASEAN will be able to issue the joint communique?
Yeah, I saw you raise that question to Dr. Cheng Vannarith. Okay, I think that from my own perspective, that should be possible. I mean, that should be possible for ASEAN to issue the joint statement, but we cannot. But I'm not sure about the quality. We say not the quality, but just how strong the statement, how strong it is. But I'm sure that ASEAN, under the chairmanship of Cambodia, would be able to issue the statement after the meeting, because I'm sure that this is the third time for Cambodia to be the chair of ASEAN, and Cambodia learned a lot during during the 2012 when Cambodia was in the chair of ASEAN for the second time. And because there are so many things to learn, and Cambodia have learned, yes, Cambodia has learned from its experience. So I'm sure that ASEAN must be able to issue a statement after that. Yeah, but we cannot predict anything, but based on the experience and something that is took place in the past, and also my own prediction. Yeah, I'm sure that we, or Cambodia, must be able to issue a statement, or must be able to deal with that kind of tough situation. Yeah.
Yes, one more question to Dr. Som. So just would like to know, like, do you expect that there will be more or less like kind of stressful environment compared to the scenario in 2012 and right now in 2022? Yeah.
I think we have so many problems. Some some of Cambodian officials try not to mention about the South China Sea issue. But in my own perspective, I think I just worry that the South China Sea issue will come back again. But that's usually we know that the South China Sea issue is still in there. But recently, the current president of the Philippines, he said that he is ready to talk to ASEAN, and he is ready to talk about something that is beneficial to his own countries. So actually, before this, I and Dr. Cheng Vannarith, we did not mention about the South China Sea issue, but we should not forget that the problem, or it will not come for the meeting. I think there are some countries that may mention about the South China Sea issue during the country, and because the lesson in 2012, when Cambodia was the chair of ASEAN, we have Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia, and some countries that demand some part in the South China Sea. So I'm sure that there will have a country, or there are countries that will talk something related to the South China Sea issue. And also right now, even today, even at the beginning of the chair of ASEAN of Cambodia, we also have some countries that reject the chairmanship of Cambodia, namely Malaysia, and some countries that criticize Cambodia by using different strategy to lead ASEAN. So if we talk about the problem, I'm sure that there are different topics that will rise during the meeting, and every countries they will raise the topic that is beneficial or that is related to their countries. So many problems will come and many problems will be raised during the meeting. But it will based on the capacity of Cambodia to lead, to facilitate the meeting. Because I hope Sreynou know that the chair of ASEAN just can play the role as the moderating role, and we cannot judge this kind of this case, but the chair of ASEAN just moderate. And so which topic that is the most priority and which topic that is the most important for each situation, that topic will be raised to discuss and to get the agreement or to get a consensus from the meeting. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Dr. Som. That's really important. So I would back to Dr. Vannarith. So as Dr. Som has mentioned, like yes, there will be like many issues during the meeting. So yes, we can see like Dr. Vannarith mentioned earlier that Indonesia and Thailand, that they have already witnessed the kinds of diplomatic proxy war, that there were like walkouts, even no joint statement during the G20 foreign ministers and APEC earlier. So yeah, in the worst scenario for our AMM meeting, so what should we do if ASEAN could not be able to issue the joint communique? Yes, thank you, Doctor.
I think we need to separate this meeting. So ASEAN Foreign Minister meeting, it's among ASEAN foreign ministers. So that is manageable. So joint statement can be issued without much kind of difficulties. But the ASEAN Regional Forum and the East Asia Summit Foreign Minister meeting, East Asia Summit Foreign Minister meeting, it's no need to issue a joint statement. It's just a discussion in preparation for the summit, East Asia Summit later this year. But the ASEAN Regional Forum, normally we need to issue a joint statement after the meeting, which have more than 20 member states in the ASEAN Regional Forum, including Russia or even North Korea in that framework. So that perhaps is the most challenging and most difficult. So for the East Asia Foreign Minister meeting, I think agree to disagree will be the key highlights of the meeting. So at least we understand the country position, interest, and intention. So that as a chair, we are prepared for the summit in November. But I think this meeting will give us a lot of information with regards to a country position and interest. North Korea nuclear program will be also one of the key issues in addition to the South China Sea, which is these two issues are chronic issues. It's always on the table for many decades already. So that's why we don't want to highlight the early stage, because Myanmar and the war in Ukraine is emerging issues. And it has drawn more attention. South China Sea and North Korea are long-term issues and chronic issues in this region. Of course, it will appear at the upcoming meeting because North Korea recently had tested missiles and perhaps also other nuclear weapons. In the future, we don't know, but the situation on the Korean Peninsula is not that good at this stage. The tension is on the rise. South China Sea, as Dr. Som mentioned earlier, it's remained a tricky point. Lack of consensus with regard to the negotiation of COC, and this year marks the kind of from 1992 30th anniversary of the DOC, right? So that is a kind of a remarkable kind of milestone in the kind of a regional efforts in managing diffuse tension in South China Sea. So all these even combined, you can visualize the picture that Cambodia need to face in upcoming Foreign Minister meeting. But we need to compartmentalize it into different meetings, and the ASEAN +1 meeting will be easy because it normally talk about bilateral ASEAN US, ASEAN China, ASEAN Japan. ASEAN +3 will be less controversial because ASEAN +3 mainly focus on economic issues. We call it low politics issue. And other meeting, I'm not sure about the Mekong ministerial meeting, because without the participation of Myanmar, whether we can call it a Mekong US meeting or Mekong Japan. So that is something I don't know with regard to the Mekong frameworks. So in general, I can see is it will be a very difficult task and uphill task for Cambodia as a chair of ASEAN this year.
Thank you, Dr. Vannarith. That's really insightful. Yeah, so I think we have talks, yes, a lot about the meeting during and before the meetings. So now it's come to the last question for our dialogues. Just for kinds of your recommendations, or you can say do you have any suggestion with regard to the priority of Cambodia as the chair for this upcoming meeting, as well as for the ASEAN chair within this year? So I would give the floor to Dr. Som first. Yes, thank you.
I think this is the last question and also the tough question. I mean, it is always be the most tough situation to give a recommendation to the experts who are. It is a bit hard for me to give this kind of a recommendation. But I think as a chair of ASEAN, Cambodia is doing the right thing already right now. I mean, because we need to prioritize what is the hot topic and what is the most important for the region, because right now, like the case that is happening in Myanmar, that is become hotter and hotter. So we just, Cambodia need to work and need to show that kind of topic, because it is generally, it is related to ASEAN members, and it is happening in ASEAN association. So working on the most priority topic should be the most important thing for Cambodia to solve and to moderate as a chair of ASEAN. I myself, I appreciate and support what the Cambodian government is doing right now, because it seems like as a chair, Cambodia know what to do and what has to do immediately. We know that there are many problems in ASEAN, but working on the right topic and working on the right case is the most important one. So as a chair, we should focus and pay attention to something that is related directly to ASEAN countries. Because some countries or some ASEAN countries and some dialogue partner of ASEAN, they may try to raise different topics during the ASEAN meeting and ASEAN plus and ASEAN plus. But as a chair, Cambodia should focus on something that is mainly related to ASEAN, because sometimes if we raise so many topics and we cannot solve that even just one specific topic. So working on the case that related to ASEAN and then try to focus on that, I think that would be the most important for Cambodia as a chair of ASEAN. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Som. So could I know the viewpoint from Dr. Vannarith? Yes.
Yes, referring to the main theme of ASEAN chairmanship this year is addressing challenges together, right? ASEAN Act, ACT. So it has two components in it. First, in order to address challenges together, we need to work together, right? So this kind of multilateral efforts is very important to address challenges together. If we cannot build consensus, international coalition and cooperation to address challenges, we cannot deal with it effectively, right? Because most of the challenges are transboundary, complex, very interconnected with one another, such as food, energy, climate change, crisis, war, pandemic, socio-economic downturn, those are all interlinked. We did not expect that the war in Ukraine would affect food security, or leads to this inflation spike across the world. So that is something we did not expect before the war took place. Immediately after the war took place in Ukraine, we did not expect these consequences that affect the whole world, right, in terms of well-being of the people. So that is addressing challenges together. We need to pool our resources together to address it. And ASEAN Act, it's no longer talk, but we have to act. So we must promote action-oriented community building, regional cooperation. So these two phrases, ASEAN Act and addressing challenges together, reflect the priorities of ASEAN chairmanship this year. But to do this, it's not easy, but we have a vision. We bring ASEAN member state and dialogue partner to that destination. But along the path, it's kind of rocky path. It's not easy, but at least we set the vision for the group.
Thank you, Dr. Vannarith. So I think we may leave here for today because we have time constraint. So thank you once again, Dr. Vannarith and Dr. SEUN for your times and kind contribution to make our dialogue happen today. And I look forward to having you in our next episode. Thank you, Doctor. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, so the dialogue is coming to an end. Thank you for watching, and I see you in the next episode.